We could talk about the importance of microphones and things like that and your sound cards, but it's important that you have the right footwear on when you're making records, and obviously flip-flops are the best item of footwear you can wear when making records.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Session Recall podcast. This episode is a continuation from week 17. So there's basically viewer questions that have come in to us via email, via our social media channels, basically anything that's been posted from us from previous episodes, from any previous topics that we've talked about, and recording questions in particular for the next few episodes. And without further ado, we'll just jump straight back into this episode where we'll be following up with the next set of questions, which we'll be talking a little bit about mastering. I'm on the wrong screen. Well done, me. Masters. So this came from someone else who's also coming on the production workshop. So this one's come from Morgan. He was messaging about mastering. And when you're sending files for masters, what do you send? It was really about do I send stems? Do I send multiple elements for the mastering engineer?
I mean, I know stem mastering is becoming more and more popular, and it is a thing, but I'm still only asked for my stereo WAV file in the highest resolution that, whatever it was recorded at, basically. When we use Pete Mayer, we just send the stereo mixes to him. He's not there. There's times when he's said, oh, maybe you could just tweak this in the mix, and then that means this will do this in the master, blah, blah, blah. But no, I've not done it. And the times I've mastered, I've gone to Abbey Road and stuff. It's always just been my stereo files in WAV format at whatever sample rate it was recorded at. I've not had any artists ask me to send stems for mastering. I've not had any mastering engineers ask for that yet.
Just to expand on that, can you just explain where would stems be useful?
I guess for a mastering engineer to be able to, they get a mix and the vocals maybe just buried a little bit too much, and I know they can bring it out a certain amount, but obviously if they've got the stems there, they can easily just pop that up there. So it's easier for them to do that without it affecting other things within the mix then. And obviously if you're bringing up the center of your track to pop the vocal out a little bit or taking the sides out a bit further, it's going to alter things that are in the middles, kicks and snares and things like that. So it's great, but I guess if you're mastering on a budget, then there's no time for the mastering engineer to really do that. So that you should really get that right in your mix first. But I get it why mastering engineers they can maybe do a better job, because obviously they can just compress certain things, elements of the mix if they want to there. But it depends what your mastering engineer is doing. If he's just there to, is the mix good? Am I just bringing it up to commercial level? Is it, does it need a lot of help? If it's a terrible mix, and having the stems would be great for them, but then you're kind of almost remixing the track a little bit.
I think that's the thing about the stems, is it's almost like passing off the job to someone else a little bit. And so it's the amount of time I imagine it would take to kind of balance and mix out the stems again. It's that's the extra amount of time, and if you're paying by the hour, then that's going to eat into it. It's going to take a little bit. It may take a little bit longer.
Because I can't imagine sending a mix off going, this mix sounds terrible, but we'll just send the stems to the mastering engineer and he can sort it out. It's just it's not, you got to get the mix so you're happy with the mix. There might be maybe just needs a little bit more oomph, but the mix sounds great, so I don't want to touch it, and that'll come from mastering or whatever. And,
I think
if you just kind of make sure that, there's no, that sonically it's all in the right place where it needs to be for that mix and that style, really. So,
Well, I think the other thing is when we've done stems in the past, it's never really for mastering, is it? It's usually for TV.
Yeah.
Normally where we have to run everything off. So it makes it much easier when we're in the box completely. Yeah. But you have to run everything off with the processing on, so that if a TV wants to have an instrumental mix and then bring the vocals in after a certain point, they can do that. I remember we did this for Fisher's Head, didn't we?
Yeah.
I think that's the last time I remember doing that, was where we have to have the mix set up back in the studio, have all the same settings, and then run off the drums, run off the bass, run off the guitars, and the vocals. So then they could have the label wanted it for publishing, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, there's things I've mastered where I wish I'd had the stems, because there's not a lot I can do with it, because it's just a bad mix, badly recorded, and you think, if I had the stems now, I could do this and I could do that, and there's like a echoey vocal going on where it's been badly recorded, things like that. But then those things are usually low budget sessions and low budget mastering sessions. So you're doing the tracks really cheap for people, kind of doing 3 in this time it would usually take to do 1. And then you think, well, if it's that kind of battle then, because yes, if I had the stems, I could get a much better master out of this. But then I'm going down the road of remixing the track for them, which you're not getting paid for. And if it's a 10-track album, you're doing it like that. That's a lot of work then to do that.
Yeah.
I might bring it up that is something I could do. And usually there just is no budget, because this is why it sounds like it does in the first place. So they're just like, no, just make it sound as good as you can with what you've got.
Yeah, I think that was probably when we went back to the mixing question. What wouldn't you touch? I suppose like if something's really badly recorded, I think send it back to them. And say, look, I think you need to do a little bit more work on this. We need to get other players in.
Yeah.
That could be another part.
Yeah, and he refused mixes quite a lot, just saying it's not quite ready to get it to where, I want to be before I mix it. I
Yeah.
want it to be before I mix it. Well, I mastered something for someone the other day, and there was things I could have done and the things we could have changed in the mix, but there was no time or
Yeah.
money to do that. And they'd sent it to radio, and the radio liked the song, but they wouldn't play it because it wasn't at commercial volume, and also the vocal sounded really echoey. There was kind of a weird frequency knocking about, and so they refused to play it. So they just sent it to me, and they said, "No, we can't afford to remix it. We can only afford to get it mastered. What can you do with it?" I mastered it, and then it got played last weekend. I think possibly Steve Lamacq. I'm not sure. Anyway, someone played it, and it got them some radio play over the weekend just from that little bit of work on remastering it.
Yeah, I think that's the benefit, isn't it? If having a mastering engineer, having someone third party, I suppose it goes back to last week's episode when we were talking about mastering, is having that third ear, like the extra set of ears are completely neutral, haven't heard stuff. They can kind of highlight, well, there's a resonant frequency here which we can cut out. With there's bits we can bring the volume up. So obviously, when people say mastering's a dark art, it's well, yes, it is. No one really knows what it is. It is all magic, just like synths. No one knows how synths work.
Yeah.
But having the experience and understanding EQ, understanding frequencies, you can go, okay, that's building up. If we take that out, that might open things up, and it'll
Yeah,
mean
knowing
the
your room,
compressor's
knowing
not
your
hitting as hard
monitoring.
and stuff as well.
Yeah. Yeah, knowing your room, knowing your monitoring,
Yeah.
you get it and you go, right, well, that shouldn't sound like that. That should sound like. Oh, there's a question from Richard Jones, the legendary Richard Jones.
Richard Jones, assuming you record drums first, what order would you choose to multi-track the 5-piece guitar band? 5-piece guitar band? Does that mean they got keys?
No, I
Has he
think they've just
incorporated a
got.
keyboard player?
Don't know. But I think he's just talking drums, bass, 2 guitars, and vocals, right?
Yeah. Yeah, let's go with that.
Obviously, you've done the drums first. Like, he's assuming we've recorded the drums first there, so which makes sense. I mean, I've done records where I've put the drums on last just because they recorded a lot of stuff themselves, and then they've wanted to come into the studio to add the drums. Doesn't always work, but we've done that a few times. For me, drums, yeah. Then get the bass on. Then I would get the main guitars, as I call them, rhythm guitars, and then I'd get the vocal on. Probably get a guide vocal on very early at the beginning. Something that Noel Gallagher was talking about on that interview he was doing the other day. Actually,
Oh, where he's bigging you up, wasn't he?
I think he was talking about me and going into the studio with an engineer, and he was talking about it on there. He was talking about getting some advice that Weller had given him was to get the vocal on early, so you can kind of hear how the track should be and build everything around that. Yeah, but it's a nice interview with him, which you could probably put up, John, for people to listen to. Yeah, it's good. So yeah, I would get a good vocal, even if it ends up being a guide, but a really good vocal down. But yeah, it would be drums, bass, rhythm guitars, then the main vocal, kind of finish it off any bits. Then depends if sometimes people can only be there certain times of the day, whether they've got work or whether they're not there for the whole session. So if there's keys, they might go on then if he's there. If not, we'll work on backing vocals or percussion. Depends if the drummer's doing the percussion or if I'm doing the percussion or someone else is doing the percussion. And sometimes it's just what you hear. You hear an idea, don't you? And you go, oh, let's throw that on now while it's fresh in our head, work on some synth parts or whatever. Generally, I'm kind of build up a strong rhythm section, then get the vocals on, and then add the kind of bits around it. Because you need that vocal to know where your lead guitarist doesn't just play all over the vocal. You need it sat there. And then last kind of bits, maybe little effects, maybe atmospheric noises, the guitar solos, little bits that come in and out, kind of noises, production stuff, really.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. I seem to tend to go between doing guitars next, then bass. But it depends. If it's a really good bassist, I might just get him to put it down. But then it also comes down to, I suppose, like the pre-production element, where you have this habit of sometimes bands can't quite hear themselves. sometimes they're not all playing the same thing. I've been doing guitars before bass a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense as well. I mean, it depends if he's going to try and keep the bass and the drums, if they're solid and they know and the parts are right. But yeah, I've had that where the bass doesn't quite fit with what the guitars are doing, and the guitars are the main riff of the song and the hook of the song, and then because the bass player can't like you say hasn't probably been able to hear himself in the rehearsal room.
Yeah, sometimes it might take a little bit more, and then it depends. Yeah, it's on band by band basis. Like sometimes
Yeah,
you'll have a band where the bass and drums are tracked together and it sounds perfect. It's like it's
yeah,
really tight. There's not much that really needs to be done to it.
yeah. But you might revisit the bass because there might be passing notes that all of a sudden could be put in once the guitars are on. You hear, well, that could do with
Yeah,
that, or passing notes that need to be taken out because everyone's accenting that already on the guitars, on the
yeah,
drum, whatever. So yeah, we can tweak it,
yeah.
swap them.
It's usually setting it up, isn't it? Setting the room up so you can kind of go between it, each and everything. I do know the answers. Do you normally just, like go song by song? Do you do it in sections? So like, do you split up the vocals if it's like more than one song?
Yeah, so I don't like to do all the drums, then all the bass, then all the guitars, then all the. I don't like that. We kind of sometimes in batches. Sometimes we might get all the drums done. It depends. 'Cause sometimes we're like only in Rockfield to do drums and bass, and then we got to go somewhere else. So yeah, you would do all the drums and bass. But I kind of like to build a song. Really, in an ideal world, I like to build it and then move on. But or do it in batches. I just don't like to leave all the vocals to the end because then a lot of pressure on a singer, and if he gets ill towards the end of the session, then that's it. It's kind of there's no vocals then. But yeah, to sing like a whole album's worth in the last couple of days, and then if that singer's doing all the backing vocals, that's a lot of singing. So I like to get some vocals done early on, even if it's at the end of the night. Just get some takes every night. Just get some vocal takes on something, so that and then comp them as you go. You might not have the final vocal, but at least you've got a lot of it done. And just get the singer used to being in the room, used to singing, used to the headphones. And I just say to them that if you want to sing at any point, you go and sing. If you say no, I want to sing now, I'm ready, then you go and sing because we got to get those vocals done when you're feeling it.
Yeah.
Would you? I mean,
Yeah, my biggest worry all the time is like blowing a singer's voice out. I
yeah.
think, and like I think sometimes singers don't know, like singers who are starting out don't always know how good their voice is, or know when to stop. So
No,
trying
you
to spread
don't.
it out a little bit.
Yeah. Because they always make that comment, John. They always say, no, just line the tracks up one after another, 10, and I'll just sing all 10. Just sing it
I
through.
got 10 songs. It only takes 45 minutes to do the whole
Yeah,
album.
yeah. Just line them up on
One
one
take.
session, and I'll just sing them all one after another. Yeah, right.
That's not how the production works.
No, no.
You can definitely do that, but I mean, how much would be usable? But then do you find like sometimes like the guide for whatever reason just works?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah,
Like
sometimes.
I've done it a couple of times where the guide just it's got something, and maybe because it's a dynamic mic and it's just in the room, no headphones, they're more comfortable.
Yeah. But
But I
lead
think
singer's disease hasn't had any time to kick in at that point, John. So,
can't give away lead singer's disease, Nick. Everyone will know
sorry.
now.
Yeah, sorry.
That brings us on to the next question.
Right.
Dynamic versus condenser mic for vocals in the studio. Would you prefer? Which one would you prefer, or does it depend on the song and the setting?
It does. But as you know, I like to record a dynamic and a condenser together. And then I'll record both and I'll make the decisions later in the mix or whatever. One will sit better in the track. So we use like the U67 along with the SM7, or you just might, or a 58 or something, and you might just compress the shit out of the dynamic, make it grainy, and then the other one you might leave. Other times you're just using one of the mics, but I'll have them both set up so that I can decide later. And other times it just works if you're in the control room, for instance, you might just use a 58 or a 57. Doing vocals with a young artist called Lisa Mottram the other week, and her voice just suits a 57. She sings in the control room, no headphones, and the 57 for what she wants, that graininess, that the way it sounds with her voice, that's what she wants to use, and she responds to that mic better than putting her in front of a really expensive microphone with headphones. So it just works. Tim from Ashby used to do a lot of his vocals in the control room with just a 57, and it just worked. The response when he's right on the mic, also without the headphones, and less spill off the 57 in the control room. So yeah, the setting does make a difference, but generally I'll set up one of each. And then sometimes I'll use just one depending what's sitting in the track. Sometimes I use both.
I thought you said I'll set up on a beach, and thinking I like to do vocals on a
I
beach.
have vocals on a beach. Yeah, good. Just all you need is 57 on the beach, John. But yeah, I mean, to set in and how people like Scott Kitten Pyramid talk about him again. It's like in the control room, just with a 58. That's what he likes, you know. No headphones, the music cranked, doesn't care about the spill. That's how he likes singing. So that then maybe overrides the tonal quality of the mic, you know, because you're getting the performance and he's comfortable and it works for him. So that's outweighing or the fact that it's not a Valve 47 or a U67 or what C800G or whatever, you know. Other times you really are finding the mic that suits the singer. If you've got time, you might have a range of vocal mics. Might be a really good singer, really technical singer. You need to capture every aspect of that voice. And you might have a mic off between about 5 or 6 mics, and then you might go, no, that's the one. And then you're just using that one mic and you'll use that for the whole album. That's the one that captures the voice. That's the one we need to use for the album. And that could be the 58, you know? But yeah, but I'm a fan of having both set up, recording with both. And then I kind of choose when I'm mixing them.
I remember when I used to be on sessions, even Rockfield, it used to be like 414, SM7, and a Valve mic, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And most of the time, it would normally be like the 414 or the SM7, but every now and then, I remember it was like the Solid Tube.
Yeah.
And you just get like a soft vocal or something where it's just like the Solid Tube all of
And
a
the
sudden
Solid Tube does it. Yeah.
becomes the right mic for that thing.
Yeah, but as soon as it's kind of like a loud, shouty vocal, it would just never work. And I always find that with the Valve 47, actually, when we go to Martin's, if it's kind of like a soft kind of up front, it's nice. But as soon as it's kind of anything that's pushing, it never used to win that mic. And even though it's an amazing mic, it never used to win, did it? So I find that with the Solid Tube as well. The 414 is just a great mic. It just, you could use that all the time. And
Yeah.
we use that with Danny from Thunder a lot, and it just suits his voice. But it's a great all-round mic. My favorite mic.
For people who might be recording themselves a little bit, so say like we're recording at home, would you say would dynamic or condenser come into it a bit more then, or like would we be more leaning one towards the other, or would it be really just depending on?
So yeah, it depends on this. It does depend on what room you're recording in at home. Having a nice mic is great if you can record your vocals at home because you can spend all that time on it, and you're not conscious about other people being around and all that kind of stuff. But if you're on a budget and you're at home and your room's not particularly good, I don't think you can beat an SM7B for the money.
Yeah.
If you buy that, you'll get good vocal sounds out of it. It's a great mic.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm using the MV7 now, the USB one.
Yeah.
I
You
like
sound
it.
like Elvis. It's brilliant.
I am
It's
Elvis.
rich,
Look at my hair.
velvet. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think if you've got a treated room, I think it's good. I think sometimes, obviously, with like condensers, they could be a bit more sensitive to the room, maybe.
Yeah.
And then like
it's difficult then. Yeah.
So I think starting out, like that's why, like when you start out recording, and as we said when we talked about like recording vocals just now, like in the studio, 58s are great; they can work, but it's just like working. I remember like when I was doing work experience in Welsh Club in Cardiff, they just said like, look, just work with what you've got, and you learn more from doing that than you will be like just trying to buy, the next best thing, or like keep trying to spend it, like upgrade everything.
Yeah, and someone goes out and buys a $2,000 mic, and then they've still got their really shit preamp. Spend half the money on the mic and get a better preamp as well.
Just get a USB one. I think this one might be. That is the last question.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks everyone for the questions. Josh, Craig, Richard, friend Guy Mitchell over in Spain here, and who else did we have questions off? Morgan. So cheers. Good set of questions.
So thanks very much for watching. If you guys have any questions for us, please just drop us a message, leave us a comment on YouTube, or send us an email at podcast@sessionrecall.com. As we said, we've got a guide for bands who are starting out called the Bands Checklist, which is available at sessionrecall.com/band checklist. And we've already mentioned as well that we've got the production workshop happening in April. There's a couple of spaces left on that now as well, and that's available at sessionrecall.com/band checklist. And thanks again for listening, for watching. And if you know anyone who'd be interested and think this podcast would be useful for them, please share, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you all again next time.
One thing before we go, John. One
Yeah.
thing before we go. We talked about obviously bands sending us T-shirts and things like that. That's great. Roland have sent us some amazing equipment, and Boss. We get sent stuff all the time. But if anyone wants to send me some flip-flops, that would be brilliant, because the dog has eaten all my flip-flops, and we could talk about the importance of microphones and things like that and your sound cards, but it's important that you have the right footwear on when you're making records, and obviously flip-flops are the best item of footwear you can wear when making records.
Yeah, they do keep you grounded.
So, yeah, the dog's eating all my flip-flops. So
was that Ronnie
if anyone
Barker?
wants to send me flip-flops... No, it was Rafa Brainitez. So, yeah, if anyone wants to send me some flip-flops, send them to Leadersville Studios or Rockford Studios, addressed to me, and I will happily wear them on our podcast.
And give you a shout out.
Because you won't get to see them.
Well,
Okay,
yeah, I don't think we've seen your feet yet, Nick. All right, see you later.
No. Yeah, see you later.